ready?
Yeah.
There we go, thank you.
No.
It's good. So it's the beginning of December, and obviously Christmas is fast approaching. And on a freezing cold day, my wife and I headed up to the city of Bath, which is in the southwest of England, and it's renowned for the beautiful architecture there, among other things. They have something like 5,000 listed buildings, and it's mostly Georgian architecture. So, a really unique city. It's got a lovely atmosphere. And as it's the approach to Christmas, they have an open air Christmas market. So, there are stalls dotted around the city streets in the center of the city. Well, we got so cold that we could barely feel our fingers, even though we were wearing gloves. And we came across this stall which was selling mulled wine and spiced apple juice. So it seemed like the perfect opportunity to grab a drink, which we did. Very, very nice apple juice they sold us. Um, and I took that little video clip because I thought, oh, that'll make a cool painting. So in terms of the painting itself, we're always, thinking, or convention says you paint the background first and then the foreground. But what I'm actually going to do today is reverse that and do the foreground first and then paint the background in afterwards. And I think for the particular technique I'm using today, which is basically impressionism with a combination of acrylic paint and watercolor, I think it works really well. And I personally feel there are some advantages to doing the background last. But I'll get to that in a bit. So I've started out with my A2 mixed media paper. I'm using interactive acrylics. This is burnt umber and a flat synthetic brush. I've sprayed the surface of the paper with water, and that allows the paint to flow nice and freely across the surface of the paper. However, it's not as unpredictable as watercolor. So I think this is a beautiful balance using interactive acrylics on a wet surface and fairly dilute paint. It gives you some of the expressiveness of watercolor, but you've got more control. So as you can see, I've started to block in the person serving the mulled wine, just put in the canopy and blocked in the torso, the head. We've got these columns of red cups. Sorry, voice is obviously a bit still suffering from the cold weather, I guess. So we've got these columns of red cups stacked in the bottom right corner, and we've got a barrel full of the hot drinks. And now I'm moving on to some of the people who are crowding around this market stall. Notice the guy in the center of the reference who's got his back to us in the dark coat with the kind of winter hat on. I'm going to ignore him completely. Instead, I'm going to focus predominantly on the four people on the left side of the reference. So just putting in the outline of the lady with light hair. She's got a blue and white striped top on, and she's carrying a bag. And the idea or the approach I take if I'm doing an impressionist style painting is, I will do some line work, but even then I'm looking at the big shapes and what I would also call the essential shapes. So for example, in order to communicate that the person on the right is in a market stall, I need to put in the canopy in some way. In terms of showing what they're selling, there needs to be a container for the drink. And then the columns of cups help to tell the story that something liquid is being, sold here. We've also got the beginnings of a billboard to the left of that barrel. Now we need to continue the story and show that some people are interested in buying this stuff. So as you can see, I've got the guy, the woman, just added some of a guy with a woolly hat on, and I'm putting the lady in the bottom left corner, just kind of peeking in out of frame, because especially in a crowded situation like this, things are rarely perfectly composed in real life. So I could set those people up so that they're all kind of key players on a stage, but that's not the reality of the situation. That's not the feeling I get if I'm in a crowd. The feeling I get is I can't really keep track of everyone, and people keep popping in and out of my peripheral vision. So having established the main people that are going to be in this painting, I've now switched to some cadmium red. Just blocking in a bit of color for some of these cups and putting in a few more in the background as well. So now I'm starting to pick out key colourful details or key colourful shapes, which will hopefully start to enhance the story we're telling. So I haven't actually drawn or painted a single cup there. I've just painted the shape with curved edges and two straight edges of part of the cup. So I keep going with that red to block in the underside of the canopy. So I'm not overly concerned about matching the colours I'm using to reality. And then I'm not overly concerned about capturing the exact framework of this canopy either. I just need to put in some lines which will kind of give the impression that this canopy is being supported in some way. Now the lady bottom right has also got a red or orangey red top on, so may as well carry on with this colour and block in some of her. And then aiming to be reasonably efficient, just taking some of that red and mixing in some cad yellow. So now I've got kind of an orangey brown, which is suitable for the guy's woolly hat. And then having painted that in, I can think, well, where am I going to go next with that colour? And I decide not to bother. Instead, let's add some tinting white and just use a lighter version of that colour. And we can use some of that for some of the kind of shadow tones on the face of this guy who's standing slightly nearer the market stall. And I can use the flat brush to kind of sculpt out the silhouette or the profile of his face. Do something similar with this lady here. So I'm not really drawing a face, I'm just trying to look at the general shapes, think about the contours. And the idea of Impressionism, as you probably know, is that the kind of combination of key shapes will combine to give the overall illusion that a person is standing there. Now, having added a colour to one side of the painting, I then typically think, well, do I need to add it to the other side to balance things out a little bit? So, for example, a little bit of dry brush on the side of this barrel added over the top of the burnt umber curved bands of colour that we had. It's enough to kind of begin to describe the structure of that barrel. So a bit of white with a bit of magenta now. And I'm using this to block in the torso of that chap there. And then we'll add a couple of touches of that same colour on the other side of the painting, hinting at different objects that might be hanging from a hook or different parts of the structure of the market stall. Here I'm just putting in those two strokes towards the bottom of the paper that I did a few seconds ago. They're meant to indicate a little bit of the card machine that the person's using to, allow people to pay. And I just blocked in some what could be gloves or hands and the hat as well. So all with the same color. So the idea is you've got color of the same shape, shapes of the same color in multiple locations, fairly evenly distributed about the composition. So over to ultramarine blue now. Again, still a fairly fluid mix. I'm keeping my paint application nice and thin because that's going to allow me to put some texture down into the marks. So it's a very efficient way of doing things. So adding more white to the mix, so I get a slightly different blue now for this lady's top.